Hi. Okay. Um, let's see. Is that good? Okay. So I titled this "What's Next," and the reason I titled "Next" is because um, there were some things that I needed to get together. Not so much because I didn't, but I was just like, well, let me go ahead and get it done. It was just something to do. I don't want to say I didn't have any time while I was studying. 'Cause I was studying and I was going to school, and I was learning, right? So this, I needed to make sure that I put it together because I am operating under our my communications under Strictly Company in regards to my work. And there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. One of those things is when I was growing up, there was a group of ladies. Well, maybe it was about three ladies. I don't want to say a whole lot of them, but they were my elders, and I was young too. I don't even think that I was young. And so we were having a conversation, and I was speaking, and I would think I was trying to bring forth my points. Not so much, but I want to do this, I want to do that. Matter of fact, it was even before high school, right? So one of the ladies said, "Well, Irene, I think you should be studying law." And so I was like, "I don't know if I want to do all of that. I don't think I finished high school yet. I don't think so." And so some of my direction of where I was going when I was in different fields. And I think that once you're growing up, a lot of people, we don't make the right choices, or we're just doing what we want to do. And I think that it wasn't so much that I was not doing anything. I think that I was focused on, at the time, it was public health. So I started to go into school for medical. So I started studying medicine, and I was like, okay, well, maybe if I, um, you know, young, go ahead and do this and do that. I was still pursuing school, but I thought that maybe perhaps learning a trade would probably been beneficial to me. It is time consuming, meaning that you put a lot of work into um, one thing or the other, and then you think about looking at employment, and you want to get employed and all other kind of stuff. So my first approach was medical, and then I went into banking. Okay, and so from there, um, I've kind of wanted to pursue some of my own thoughts about community. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I don't think that the community actually came um, until a little later. Like I couldn't honestly tell you that I was proactive when I was at my apartment. I don't think so. Um, I think I participated, but I couldn't sit there and say, okay, well, I was actively involved in any one particular movement. I think that I was around. The woman said, "Don't be telling people, just tell them you're around." But no, no, seriously, I think I was just, here and there, and I just kind of picked up a lot of different thoughts of other people and some of their comments and stuff like that. So I just kind of learned a lot of things along the way in regards to my profession and stuff like that. I was just like, okay, I don't want to say that it was a late bloomer, but I became more awakened once I actually became an owner. Okay, so now my level of thought at the time in one area, and then looking at where I grew up, then I was like, okay, well, you know what? There's a purpose. It wasn't so much that I did not know about a few other things. It's just that I realized that there were opportunities that were available for young people. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'll go to school, I'll do this, no different, the common stuff, you know, things that we think that are common. I think that a lot of those things are there readily for us to use, and some people use them and some people do not. Some people are late bloomers, okay? So anyway, as I began to pursue my own course, it wasn't that other people weren't involved because I was participating with them. Now as a young adult, okay? So that participation and their outreach, I realized at that time, this is the formation. Well, we could go door to door, right? Not so much about getting people registered to vote. That wasn't it. So going door to door was like, okay, we'll go door to door and we could just say, well, hey, what is it that what's going on? Everything okay? You all right in there? And the things that we don't realize, um, some things are just easier said than done. Okay. So you can have this big plan and idea, and it involves other people. I didn't not once think that it didn't involve other people. And I'm gonna let you know right now, I am an advocate for education. So I do support education. Okay. And so anyway, um, just the support to get people going. Matter of fact, one of the first things when I was with the church, the pastor said, "Well, listen, I've been out here with some of these young people, and at the time I didn't even have my own high school diploma." So he said he was out there trying to get people to get their high school diploma. So I learned that you don't, if people want you to lead them or to spot a facility or something like that, you would be there. Okay. So he was like, "Well, yeah, I was out there trying to encourage the young men to get their high school diploma." And at that time, well, you know what? I mean, I achieved my high school diploma. As a matter of fact, I even had college credits, but I didn't have a college degree. Okay. So was I inspired? Well, yes, I was supporting somebody else in their education, when you become part of one group or the other. So it wasn't so much, and I just kind of laugh and chuckle a little bit because I say, oh, if you don't go to school for yourself, go to school for somebody else. If you don't go to school for yourself, go to school for somebody else. Okay. So now I've also learned as I started to apply for work, we have a lot of bright people out there, and the opportunities for them was not they were not reaching them. They're not reaching their height. We're out applying, you know, we're out there looking for work and so on and so forth. So anyway, um, what it was is that I began to understand some form of direction. You know, I think that it went beyond just to talk about community beautification. When you're in your neighborhood, you're right. You want to keep your neighborhood up to date. So that becomes like city or town or wherever you are. And then you find yourself proactive. Then you want to know the things that's going on in your area. You're like, okay, well, I want to know what developments, what plans and stuff like that. So you start finding yourself involved. And there are people who live in apartments too, because the thing is that if rents start going up, it affects them. Okay, so if they're not participating in the area where they stay, then that means that they're not as involved as they could be to say, well, you know what, I'm a renter, or my taxes pays for this particular area wherever they stay. Okay, so I don't want to sit there and say that people who are in the environment and they're renting are not vital as it relates to their votes. Their votes matter, or their opinion. So I don't want to. I support that. I support people being proactive wherever they live. Okay. So anyway, I don't want to say I just completed some things that were due. But the thing is that I had wrote when I was traveling. I had wrote a thing that I just called the Sioux narratives. And this is something that I had become aware of as it related not only to relationships but human rights. Okay, so I started to review the Sioux narratives, and I just like I wasn't just putting anything together. It was where I was, and so where I was located. Um, quietly, a lot of people may have complaints and then may not say anything, or that their complaints are not being heard, so they're not as boisterous. I mean, and then yet you can see yourselves in an environment, or and I mean that's including here, anywhere, okay? And you'll have people who have a voice or a concern, or that comment that being said, um, speak up for those who are voiceless. But voiceless was somewhere else, meaning that people are able to say whatever they want to say. However, they're just not being heard. I mean, that was a place else too. Anyway, the narratives, when I wrote it, I wanted to infuse, or the thought of, to talk about the arts and literature. And so I started to look at history, and I started looking at and realizing that a lot of the histories in one or more place was not there. And so whatever leisure life that someone had someplace else, it was not being applied in another location. Okay. So now we're starting to see a transition of something, and whether somebody else learned whatever it is that you were doing, and then the maintenance, okay, is no longer, let's say, in the original. Okay. And so I'm like, well, what about this one and that one? So, we grew up in a time where people were changing their names, and along with changing their names, history started to change. Some people grew up knowing of one language, so language is a part of culture. And so, anyway, I was just like, okay, wow, So I'm realizing that this table is really, really full. I mean, the world is big, and there's a lot of subjects, okay? So you can look at one subject and look at another subject and be like, okay, well, here. And then some people, they just don't know. But there's just a lot of different stuff. I tell people readily, if you say housing, what do you mean? Well, here it is, these people are this. And they say, well, now if we're looking at people, we have to look at the different categories, okay? So there's different categories when we start talking about people, no different than a profession, right? So now you're looking at people who do not speak up and people who do speak up. And then it's like, okay, well, that same word using housing, and then start talking about people, and then start talking. All these different things go into different areas, okay? It's not the 50 shades of gray, but now it goes into an area that may be specialized, or an area where it is, it requires more detailed content or detailed focus, okay? So I'm looking and I'm like, okay, no, right now it's time for me to, what is it? What's next? Like, I mean, the thought of me talking about art is real, so the effort to talk about event planning, that is a little bit more than just meets the eye. Okay, that means that now we got to raise money for the facility, and then we got to put people in it. So I'm like, well, maybe my practice is a little bit too late. Maybe I need to focus on this thing like this throughout the year, like every day. Okay, and then in between, put in those other opportunities where I'm able to produce income. So I'm looking at not only um, my outreach for business building and development, but then also the event planning aspect, which becomes part of the business. So it's just not also fun to say, okay, well, yes, I want to pick this particular time of the year. And then when I start thinking about it, on a soft note, it's like planning for a big party. Really, it is. I mean, I know the party like a celebration. So here I'm planning and I'm working and I'm trying to, get funding for this and raise money for that. And yes, I would like people to come on in. And then here it is. It can get wherever it can go. It can grow. Okay, it has the potential to grow. Now the other stuff like chick and fact is with the arts. Okay, but chick and BB&D, those things, if any one of those things, like, oh wow, yes, I have a really good idea about that water pump, or can I pursue it? Yeah, you could pursue it all day long. You could stay focused on one particular thing and say, okay, well, while I'm doing this thing, I'm gonna be focused on that. But I'm studying, right? So the area from what I had just said in the previous thing, the lady said, and it's like it become ever so real at that, realizing what it means to talk about chick, and then having, some of the elders talk and they say something about law. So I'm like, well, not so much that it's ever too late to learn about one thing or the other, but you're right. The thing is that if you were focused, you could have been for real at the Supreme Court. Matter of fact, I was just looking at something and they said, well, somebody has just been instated to talk with, into the Supreme Court. So, now you start looking at people who you can follow. But then when you start looking at all these different stuff, you're like, wow, there's a lot of different subjects. And so when we begin to look at, let's say, the different subjects as it relates to chick, it is. You have family law, you have torts, there's criminal law, there's business, there's civil, there's police, there's military. It's a lot of stuff to get into. But I just said that here it is. I had an interest on goods, innovation. So that's business building and development, right? That's kind of like what I've been doing. When I started to look at some things, I had a really, really big idea about a car. But even before then, we thought of the spray pump. I was like, wow, this oil is interesting. Don't you think we should put this bottle, because we would pour it, or we had to roll, but we didn't have the spray. So I was like, oh, it'd be really good to have oil. I was talking like baby oil and a spray bottle. Well, we did see that, people be like, oh, well, listen, we support you. And then they want to be like, they want to be all up on intellectual property. But that's the thing, as private as it is, you didn't make the drawing for the bottle. You didn't pursue it. So somebody else thought it was a great idea too. But gee, where's your royalties for that? Not so much about thinking. Sometimes it's just good to relax and to take it easy. Have a good time and find areas to be happy. Find many, many areas to be happy. Find many, many areas to be content. There's complaints. So now I think that I need to kind of make some sense about what Irene Ratliff is doing outside of planning for a big party. Look at it like that. Hey, we're planning a big party and we want people who are doing phenomenal things to participate. And yes, we're going, wherever we're spending our money, we're asking, here it is, our neighbors to help out. We want to give gifts. There's some people say, oh, what is it for this people? I said, I don't want to put any stigmas on it. We just, if you could give, let's put the gifts together so that we can put it inside and we can share it among different people. And a matter of fact, during that week, I will let you know other places that we can go. We can put it inside the bag so you know where to go. Gifts. Another thing too that I was at an outreach and asking people, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do that again. I think that my telephone number, 678-334-3409, and my email address, iratlift@gmail.com, you can get a hold of me. I was like, okay, well, maybe the newspaper and all that for business building and development. The thing is that I have learned that wherever I have traveled and participated in meetings and stuff like that now you're looking at, let's say, a union of people who has taken on an interest because they like what it is that you're saying. This is becoming, now you see the teacher, now you see the student, now you see, people who want to give their time, people, volunteers, whatever, who want to braid into whatever it is to make it bigger and better. Okay. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're right. I have another good idea. I have many, many good ideas. I haven't seen like it was around plumbing. Like the irrigation. I was like, yeah, irrigation. And the car idea, community and economic development. Even for those writs and the Mensa couldn't do it. I said, well, you still need other people to make that happen too. You know, if somebody want to take on an investment opportunity, you know, they were doing timeshares like crazy. You know, timeshares were very, very popular at one time. And they were getting a lot of people to move out there to Florida for timeshares. I don't know, timeshares is probably all over the place, but they were really doing timeshares for Florida and like the Bahamas at the time. They didn't say anything about no timeshares in other places, but we ended up getting Airbnb. But you know, timeshares was really popular. Anyway, yeah, I mean, you need people to do any of those particular projects. We could talk about kite, but money is important too. You know, people who want to invest their money. You know, I know that something else was kind of conveying votes, and you know, here it is when you give money and becomes so true when you start applying for, let's just say, you pick a party. Now, this is a political party, and then the political party, you have to pay the money. You know, you want to raise money, okay? So now you're raising money inside the political party. That's different from the organization, okay? The organization and its function to get us to one place. If you feel like there's a stream or ideology or a point that needs to be addressed in an organization, that becomes the mission and the values of the mission. For a political party, is generalized. Okay, so it's generalized, yes, to be not only an advocate for the work of whatever city, county, or state that is, but then also to address some concerns for, let's say, the people. So the way a lot of this stuff, when from one place to the other, a lot of this stuff is tiered up. Some of the people, their responsibilities is much more closer than it is, let's say, from an organized structure. Okay, so it's like having the legs and the feet and the heads in many places, queen. Okay, so you know when there's like, well, hey, you're gonna get the money and this, that, and the other. I mean, it becomes just that point when you're looking at somebody going into a political office. Okay, so anyway, let me get back to so you know, you're like, okay, well, this, you think you'll be able to raise some money? Matter of fact, I want to give some money to this young lady. Her efforts is to be the council, the next council person. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna be around if you see my name though on a ballot. I'm around here and there. Put my name. If you see my name on the ballot, it ain't no write in. That's a good thing. Irene Ratliff, raising money, and so it matters even as independent um, operation to raise money for, let's say, the arts. It becomes history. It's literary history. It becomes visual history. It becomes, you know, if you ask any one of these organizations, matter of fact, how long some of their paperwork has existed. So I had went to this church, and the church, I was like, wow, looking at all these phenomenal pictures and stuff like that. Some of them had dated back from whenever, right? And I was just like, well, where's all the other information? I was like, wow, this has history. And there was like, well, with some change of hands or change of ownership or leadership or whatever, some people, when they move out, they take some documents and stuff like that. So I was like, or if they not taking documents, I'm not gonna go there because I think about, here it is, somebody else and they're talking about how they want to hold everything. This stuff is for real people. I'm just going to, I'm sorry, my thought that went someplace else. Okay. So it's like, well, you know what? When you begin to think about your history and you have some people who want to be like, they want to be part of the Vanish team. Now we start having people running around talking about identity and who they are and where they come from and all the other kind of stuff. Then they want to be like, well, here it is, their government name and their mama name. I said, well, your government name is when you changed it. Your mama or your given name was the name your mama and them gave you. Okay. So it's a lot of stuff tied into that. So anyway, what's next? Oh yeah. I was saying something about the student narratives And so I'm going to review the some narratives. I mean, I had sent it was legitimate document. Meaning when I sent it, I wasn't just sending it. I was sending it talking about the arts. I was talking about SMC and our efforts. But then I realized that it is my efforts for the organization is the concern about the well-being of me. That part, like I said, I started looking at history and I started seeing things not as relevant. And then if you have me looking at, well, what about these people? What about these people? And I said, well, what about all those documents? What? Let's just look at Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was presidential. So if we're talking about history not there, if you look at Ted Kennedy or Robert Kennedy, a lot of that stuff when you go to Washington D.C., it kind of looked like it looked. Okay, so we're looking at the government and the government, but the same thing with that Facebook story. Hey, we can just delete your stuff. It's just like, well, hold up. Because if we're allowing them to do that, a lot of stuff go anonymous. Okay, so we become part of the praise team when it comes down to not memory alone, but here it is being able to look at things in a visual form in a book or something. Same thing with that HR 40. People are like, oh, well, they haven't done anything and this, that, and the other. Hold up. Put it in a book. Put all the people who supported it. Where's the documents and the information that was put into this thing? Where's the biography or the information on John Conyers and that effort during that time? It didn't just sit there and do nothing. Nobody worked it the way that it could be worked. But wait a minute. But when we start talking about reparations in the Atlantic, what about the Pacific? Okay, what about the other oceans, the other seas, the waters, and the sky, and the land, and all the other kind of stuff? It wasn't just come from one place. You put too much attention over there. It's all over the world. It's a global thing, honey. And it's right there in our face. And there's a little bit that we could do about a lot of stuff. And so there goes Chick again. Good Lord. Whew. That thing. So anyway, I'm going to do whatever I can do in regards to my studies. I think that I want to be focused. I want to be focused on business, right? Because those very things that I was just talking about in regards to our intellectual property and the things that are relative to, let's say, the arts and so on and so forth, all those things become business. Now, we could talk about art because, I mean, art got policies and legislations and all that other kind of stuff too. And so I'm like, well, it's inclusive, but in that all by itself, I'm talking about economic development. Okay, so research on land and all that kind of stuff. If things could be bleak, like a blink of an eye, then we need to be more cognitive. Don't you think as a people? I mean, some of this stuff, I'd be like, what in the world are we complaining about? I didn't say we should not have complaint. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that the complaints are not valid. I'm just saying, what is it that you think that we're complaining about? Oh gosh. So anyway, yes. So anyway, I'm gonna review the documents, and like I said, at the time, it was talking about the arts, it was talking about business building and development, and it was talking about Chick. So now the application to talk about business building and development, I'm realizing that it becomes more and more when people are saying, Irene, I'm liking what you're saying. And then they become part of that movement for Street Meat Company. But these people, they want to generalize it to talk about the government. Well, that's fine too. But then what about here it is our rights as an organization? Okay, so this is the clarity, and there was never an argument about being functioning as an organization, and then also being a general service for, let's say, the community at large. No, those are two different things. And I think somewhere these are something else is trying to smear it, like it's supposed to be this, supposed to be that. Where even the question about Chick is there. It's there. So anyway, let me go back into this thing. Okay, my this little thought. So I'm like, well, yeah, the organization and then the efforts to talk about Chick. Okay, one moment. Oh, yeah. So business building and development, I mean, there were opportunities to really build on that. It had started off the conversation about consultation. I mean, there were people who were out there and they were like wanting to help people start their business and stuff like that. And then I just didn't see that quite the way I wanted to see that in regards to the organization or the people, us actually, be taking on a mutual interest. I think that when we start looking at our money and where we were going with that, that became I trust you, you trust me. We're going to take on an investment or we're going to pursue something, we're going to inquire with it. Now you start talking about trust and people, trusting them with your money, and they start thinking about here it is, all these major brands and our insurance and our securities and all that other kind of stuff. Good Lord, I want to do a lottery ticket and this, that, and the other. Who's going to back you up and all that other kind of stuff. It was not just in politics alone. Understand? Okay. So yeah, there was opportunities to do apprenticeship, help people start their business. Then I'm like, well, how are we going to do all of that and then get people to take on or to work in such a way where we're finding something that we like with somebody else's group that we're able to support that group. And then while we're supporting that group, have other people who be involved in it. So anyway, I start looking at things on the other side and I just said, well, hold on. We do really do have people who talk about, well, yeah, this, that, and the other. So where are those very same people? Why they sitting there talking about they want to help be a part of, a thought, not even supporting them. I was like, the business was sitting right there on the corner, but they went all the way over there to the other people and start giving them the money. Well, here it is, your own. I said, wow, well, we all listening. And so that becomes so for real. Does this make any sense? Okay, so anyway, so I was like, well, yeah, honey, there's a lot of opportunities as it relates to business. Matter of fact, that little thing got so big, I was like, good Lord, we can do this and do this and do this. But then I started looking at a few things and I just said, wow, then that means we have to go and look at their business to see if they work and all that other kind of stuff. I want to know if I can get paid for that. I know I was sitting there talking about that farm and all. Chick. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, hold on. Here it is. Do these is everything functioning in such a way? I mean, I got to put this thing together. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the world is humongous, but this round table, the plate is getting full of just ideologies and theories and thoughts. And what you gonna do? I'm planning for that party. I got that party. Yeah, I'm planning for the celebration. Here it is, not the other party. My thought is that here it is, any one of them, those parties, political, pursue a person they like. And we're going to talk about track record and voting, voting style. What's next? Wow, well-rounded people. Okay, so anyway, looking at the other stuff, chick. No, I don't like. Here it is, that thought about people being able to do the things that they want to do, and then yet here it is, we don't have the tools, or we have the tools, but we're not utilizing the tools to set back off. I told the people, listen, cool, right? Because you're right. We gotta ask these people, these same people who want to sit there and be like they want to dictate to make them money. Now, how the hell we build all that stuff and they want to sit there and talk about, see, we asking you the same thing. How did you build all that stuff? If you asking us, and they said, well, we pay you our tax dollars, or this thing has been a little cycle. The fort is for real. Mm. I think that's business, right? That's business. It's business. Hmm. Yeah, so anyway, this is kind of like with those little, there's not wild thoughts, but where we going with this thought? Putting all those, we got all this stuff there. Everything is just here and there and there. Putting it together. You know, I think this little thing was just so simple. I'm just fill it out, but it seemed like it took me all night. I'm not complaining or anything. Because, you know, whatever. It just, okay, I just want to kind of share my thoughts on what's next. Are they valid? Sure. When I go review this narrative, what's the aim? What's the goal? What's the approach? Amelioration. But what do you mean by that? You know, that thing can go in more than one way, you know. Well, here it is. Oh, well, can this person put it? I said, well, didn't you just see those other papers that was put together? Good Lord, we done got a novel already. Like I said, it was legit. It talked about art in the poetic form, and then it started talking about immigration, and business. You see how big all this stuff started to get? Then it started talking about creating business and all the other kind of stuff with this, that, and the other. But that started looking more like BB&D. Then it started looking like more and more like people who want to take on that interest in one thing or the other. And good Lord have mercy, I think that this thing actually kind of works where people saying, you know what, I want to know that here it is. Because one of the documents, when I start reading the documents, when I start reading, let's say about nonprofit, it starts saying something about how the state is able to fold into here it is a corporation or a corporation or partnership. And I was just like, well, wow. Well, who would take on that investment and this, that, and the other, whether you're talking about member or affiliation and all that other kind of stuff. And then I started to understand why some things didn't look like it was transferred or handed down or inherited from people who said, well, you know what? I want my son, my daughter, my group, or this, that, and the other to have the investment, or the group that was working on this particular thing, then they should have a lot more knowledge on a particular thing here and there. And then we grow from wherever it is that we have, and we try to braid up and reinforce and thicken, our style and our approach. Not a group of people who want you to hide, one thing or the other time. Well, we're trying to protect here it is you, and this is like, but you sure about that, or are you trying to protect here it is that feasibility? That feasibility, is it feasible to deny us? That's that nigger, to deny us from supporting people, from supporting goods and services, or try to have us looking like we staggered, or individuals, or little dots on here it is, like we what is that, a little leopard or something, or a little jaguar, or a little feline puppy or something. There goes chick. I'm like, wow, we went through all that right there. Talk about here it is. Looking at disadvantaged group. Boy, I tell you the truth, I don't know if that word is right. Anyway, I'll come back to here it is. What's next? So I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts out loud. Yeah, like a few other things. What's next? How we gonna, not how we're gonna do it, but, we're gonna put it together, compile it, so it could go to more than one place. It's like some narratives. That stuff was valid information. It was poetic, and not only that, it started talking about immigration, migration, and human rights, and how we were seeing, how I was looking at human rights in this little cycle that's been going on, and then how this thing was being addressed in one more place. Looking at here it is an industrial country or a commercialized country to a developing country. And here it is, this process, and how they going over here, and then here it is, if you own the land and you was going through one little party, then somebody else find a way to figure out how they was able to tax it and all that kind of stuff. This stuff is for real. You're right. I could have been all up over there in property tax. I could do pretty much all of that. The woman said that. She said, we need you. For real, you want to sit there and just talk about what we can do as it relates to, let's say, the general public. But that's all fine and dandy. But what does this have to do with, let's say, the organization? The organization. Somebody will say, well, hey, we got to, and that's like, well, somewhere in there, you go over here, we'll give you your money, the arts and the inclusion and the inclusion. And we're diversified. And I said, boy, they've been sitting there kinging with us with here it is, them civil rights and them civil rights and all that other kind of stuff. That our own history is just seem like it's just looking like it's looking. And you got these people who went all the way over there to 400 with miseducation. Oh, I'm gonna look at it, okay? Put it together. And another thing, what it was is that something tried to rally up something. So anyway, what it was is the thought. I'm gonna put this on another video. Talk to you later.